Welcome to Heart Over Gold, the channel where love, kindness, and humanity shine brighter than any fortune. In today's story, Avery thought she had everything she ever dreamed of: a successful husband, Blake, and a life of comfort and love. But behind closed doors, her marriage was slowly crumbling under his arrogance and secrecy. When late-night calls and hushed messages led her to discover Blake's affair with the ambitious Vanessa, Avery's world shattered. Heartbroken but determined, she refused to remain a silent victim. With courage she didn't know she had, Avery began her journey to reclaim her dignity, her strength, and ultimately her freedom, while Blake's empire of lies slowly began to collapse around him. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments, and keep up with our latest stories. A tale of betrayal and retribution. An expectant wife was forced to stand by while her wealthy husband made a very public proposal to his mistress. Years later, it would be her turn to have the final say. In a quiet suburb just outside Dallas, a woman named Avery stepped into the gleaming lobby of a luxury hotel suite. Beads of sweat formed on her forehead, not from the Texas heat, but from the crushing blow of disbelief weighing down her chest. 7 months pregnant, her body already felt the strain of nurturing new life. Yet on this night, instead of celebrating the hope of motherhood, she found herself facing the devastating truth of her husband's infidelity. Across the room stood Blake, a rose in hand, gazing with devotion at another woman. Avery knew in an instant that her world was about to collapse. Avery's childhood had been shaped in a modest household at the edge of Dallas. Her parents instilled in her lessons of perseverance, kindness, and grit. As the eldest of 3, she often stepped into a guardian's role, nurturing her siblings when her parents worked late. She grew up believing love was something sacred, reinforced by her mother's words that true devotion meant standing by each other through life's storms. Carrying those beliefs into adulthood, Avery longed for a partner who would share both triumphs and hardships with unwavering sincerity. Blake came from a completely different life. Born into privilege, he had never known struggle. His parents, successful owners of a chain of auto dealerships, showered him with the finest education and opportunities money could buy. In high school, his friends jokingly crowned him the Prince, a nickname he brushed off outwardly, though deep down he basked in it. Later, at an elite university, he carried himself with the same entitlement. A man who believed the world existed to be claimed. Their paths first crossed at a charity gala for the pediatric wing of Mount C Hospital. Avery had volunteered at the raffle booth, her focus entirely on helping raise funds. That's when Blake walked in, dressed sharply in a tailored navy suit, his confidence palpable. Avery couldn't help but notice his commanding presence. But what drew him to her was different: her unpretentious warmth, the light in her eyes when she spoke about the cause, and the sincerity that set her apart from the glittering crowd. Blake approached, introduced himself, and asked about the fundraising goals. As the evening went on, he found himself captivated by her genuine compassion. Unlike others, she wasn't impressed by his last name or wealth. Instead, she spoke passionately about healthcare reform and how everyday people could help children in need. When Blake bought a large stack of raffle tickets, Avery laughed and reminded him charity was not a competition. That moment lit a spark in him. She was unlike anyone he had ever met. By the night's end, Blake made sure to ask for her number, and Avery, sensing something undeniable, agreed. Their romance blossomed quickly. Blake showered her with thoughtful gestures, but more importantly, he stepped into her world, He visited her small apartment, met her siblings, and even carried groceries for her mother. For Avery, he became a partner who seemed willing to see life outside his own privileged bubble. She, in turn, became his grounding force, listening to his frustrations with corporate obligations and reminding him of what truly matters: kindness and connection. 4 months later, Blake proposed to Avery beneath the dazzling Dallas skyline at Reunion Tower. The moment left her breathless. Though they had known each other only briefly, Avery's heart told her it was real. Tearfully, she said yes. Their wedding soon followed, a glamorous affair funded by Blake's family, while Avery stood proudly by her side. For a while, everything felt like a dream realized, but shadows lingered beneath the surface. Blake's temper flared easily when things didn't go his way, and he often treated success and even their marriage as symbols of conquest. Avery, ever hopeful, dismissed these warning signs. She trusted the vows they made, believing love could weather imperfections. Their families grew close, and Avery found herself embraced by Dallas's high society, adapting to a world she had never envisioned. Though Blake's sharp edges troubled her occasionally, she reassured herself that their love was strong enough to endure. In the early months of marriage, Avery clung to the belief she had found her lifelong partner, but subtle cracks began to show. Blake worked later and later into the night. Unlike before, he no longer explained his delays, arriving home past midnight with vague excuses. He grew secretive with his phone, never leaving it unattended, and avoided intimacy with her. Claiming exhaustion, Avery tried to restore the closeness, planning romantic dinners, suggesting weekend getaways, but he brushed off her efforts with hollow reassurances. Then came the gala for the Dallas Children's Foundation. From across the ballroom, Avery spotted Blake laughing with a stunning blonde in a red gown. Their body language told its own story, her hand lingering on his arm, his lack of resistance, the intimacy of their smiles. When Blake noticed Avery watching, he quickly shifted to a formal stance. Later, in the car, Avery hesitated before asking, "Who was that woman in the red dress?" Blake forced a calm smile. "Vanessa Carter," he replied smoothly. "She owns a marketing firm. My father wants to partner with strictly business." His answer sounded rehearsed, leaving Avery uneasy. Over the following weeks, Vanessa's name surfaced more often: lunches, late-night presentations, urgent meetings. Piece by piece, doubt gnawed at Avery's trust. Then life threw her an unexpected curve. During a routine appointment, she discovered she was pregnant. Her heart soared with joy, though uncertainty loomed. She hesitated to tell Blake, fearing his distance might grow worse. Still, she clung to hope, convincing herself that a baby would bring them closer. But when she finally revealed the news, during a dinner she had carefully prepared with candles and baby shoes tucked in her pocket, Blake's reaction was muted. Returning home late, smelling faintly of another woman's perfume, he dismissed her efforts with weary indifference. When she showed him the tiny shoes and whispered, "I'm pregnant," his faint smile and perfunctory kiss broke her heart. Days later, Blake's behavior deteriorated further. He stayed out longer, avoided her questions, and spoke of work as though it were his escape. Then came a call from his mother, Genevieve, polished and commanding. She offered a stiff congratulations before remarking casually, "I hope everything works out, dear. I know Blake has been very busy with Vanessa Carter. Perhaps too busy, if the rumors are true." The words chilled Avery to her core. Rumors, but deep down, she already knew. The late nights, the evasive glances, the secrecy, it all pointed to one truth. That evening, when Blake returned home, Avery stood in the living room, trembling but resolute. "I need you to be honest with me," she said, her voice breaking but strong enough to demand an answer. "Are you having an affair with Vanessa Carter?" For a fleeting second, guilt flashed in his eyes. Then his face hardened into a mask of indignation. "You're being ridiculous," he snapped. "She's a professional contact. You know, my father has big plans for the business expansion, and I have to work closely with marketing experts. Why would you even ask a thing like that?" Avery refused to back down. She stood her ground. "Because you're never home anymore. Because your phone is always hidden. Because you smell like someone else's perfume. Because your own mother alluded to rumors." She took a shaky breath, tears glistening in her eyes. "Blake, I'm pregnant with your child. If something is going on, I deserve to know." Blake's jaw tightened, and he let out a loud sigh. For a moment, Avery thought he might come clean. Instead, he turned the tables on her. "Do you think being pregnant gives you the right to interrogate me like this? You're stressed and you're overreacting. I've told you it's work." The anger in his voice hurt her. Anjay saw no trace of empathy or comfort. He brushed past her and headed to Thebodrum, leaving Avery alone, tears streaming down her cheeks. In the following weeks, the chasm between them widened into an immense gulf. Avery wrestled silently with her suspicions, noticing every subtle detail. Blake's phone buzzing late at night, the hushed conversations he would have when she left the room, and the repeated mention of marketing plans that required Vanessa's expertise. Avery felt sick with worry for herself and the life growing inside her. She still held on to a thin hope that Mabesh was wrong, or that if Blake was straying, he might confess and try to make things right. Then one Saturday afternoon, Avery made a decision she never imagined resorting to. She followed him. He had left the house in casual clothes, saying he had to meet with a client. Avery got into her own car a few minutes later, adrenaline coursing through her veins. She followed him through Dallas traffic to a luxury condominium complex near the Arts District, trying to remain unnoticed. She parked a short distance away, watched him enter the building. About 15 minutes later, she watched him walk out onto a fifth-floor balcony with Vanessa. Their body language was impossible to misread. He wrapped his arms around her waist, pulling her close. She laughed, resting her head against his chest, her hand resting on his heart. The scene drove the final nail into Avery's hopes. She snapped a few photos on her phone. Tears blurred her vision. Her heart pounded so hard she could feel it in her ears. She felt a strange mix of heartbreak, rage, and relief. Heartbreak because her marriage was crumbling. Rage because he would betray her while she was carrying his child. And relief because she now had irrefutable proof. No more doubts, no more illusions. The truth was laid bare. Blake was unfaithful, and Vanessa was the other woman. Avery sped away, her mind a whirl, sobs catching in her throat. Evan thought she wanted answers. She couldn't confront him then. Her heartbreak was too raw. Later, in the empty silence of their home, she stared at the photos on her phone, realizing that everything was about to change. The foundations of her life were crumbling, but she told herself she had to stay strong, if not for her own sake, then for the child growing inside her. The next confrontation she had with Blake would be final. There was no going back from the revelations that would soon rock both their worlds. What do you think Avery should have done after taking those photos? Should she have confronted Blake? immediately, always waiting for the right moment, a better move. Share your thoughts in the comments. The beginning of a new life. Days passed, filled with an uneasy calm in the house. Avery waited for the right moment to confront Blake with the photographic evidence. She sensed he was on edge too, as if he could feel the tension brewing beneath her silence. Then, one evening, he informed her without a hint of apology that he needed her to accompany him to an important business function at a private estate just outside of Dallas. The thought of walking into a room where Vanessa might be present made Avery's stomach churn, but something about Blake's tone felt forcefully insistent, almost threatening. Mustering her courage, she agreed, knowing she had her own plan. She wanted the truth to come out, and perhaps a confrontation in a public setting would prevent Blake from resorting to manipulation or outright denial. The event was scheduled for the weekend, giving Avery just enough time to prepare mentally. However, she could never have predicted how far Blake would go to humiliate her. The estate was a grand mansion owned by one of Blake's business partners. Avery arrived on his arm, her heart thumping hard. She wore a flowing dress that accommodated her pregnant belly. Under the bright lights of the chandeliered lobby, she saw familiar faces from Dallas high society, along with a group of younger executives she didn't recognize. And then there was Vanessa, radiant in a shimmering silver cocktail dress that thugged her every curve. She stood near the bar sipping champagne. Her eyes immediately locked on Blake. Ava's pulse quickened with anger. At first, the night proceeded like any formal gathering. Polite conversation, a luxurious buffet, and soft instrumental music in the background. But Avery could feel that something was wrong. The energy in the room felt charged with anticipation, as if everyone knew a secret that she was not privy to. She noticed how some guests gave her sympathetic glances, quickly looking away. It felt as if the ground was shifting beneath her feet. Then, at 9 o'clock, a hush fell over the crowd as Blake made his way to the center of the room with Vanessa by his side. Avery stood back, her chest tightened with every step he took. With a microphone in his hand, Blake cleared his throat. "I'd like everyone's attention, please," he began. His eyes darted toward Avery for a brief moment, but his expression was unreadable. "As many of you know," he continued, "I've been working on expanding my family's business into new markets. I've had the privilege of collaborating with one of the brightest marketing minds in the industry." He paused, looking at Vanessa with a tenderness that made Ava's stomach churn. Vanessa Carter has notably brought innovative strategies, but she has also become someone I cherish on a personal level. A ripple of whispers ran through the crowd, but no one stepped forward to stop him. Avery's frozen shock paralyzed her movements. Her heart pounded so hard she wondered if she would faint. Then, to her horror, Blake pulled a small velvet box from his jacket pocket and knelt down in front of Vanessa. "Vanessa," he said, his voice hoeing through the stunned silence, "would you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" For a moment, Avery could. Her chest seized as if iron bands were tightening around her ribs. She was witnessing her husband, the father of her unborn child, publicly proposed to another woman. Guests gasped. A flurry of astonished exclamations filled the air. Vanessa brought a hand to her mouth in a theatrical display of surprise, figning a moment of indecision before exclaiming, "Yes, Blake, of course, I'll marry you." The crowd erupted into applause, though a significant portion of the onlookers looked uncomfortable. Avery felt tears burning her cheeks. Butch was determined not to break down. The baby in her womb kicked, as if sensing the turmoil that was engulfing her. For a split second, Avery thought she might collapse under the weight of the devastation. But a fierce anger surged up, keeping her standing tall. She pushed her way through the crowd, which parted for her like a wave cutting through the sea. Blake and Vanessa turned to look at her. Their expressions shifted from triumph to something resembling alarm. Before either of them could speak, Avery raised her voice, her words cutting through the crowd. "Blake," she began. Her tone trembled with a mix of rage and heartbreak. "What do you think you're doing? I am your wife, and I am carrying your child. How dare you propose to another woman in front of me?" A silence fell again. People exchanged glances. Their faces reflected horror, pity, and in some cases, morbid curiosity. Blake stood up. His demeanor shifted tune of cold defensiveness. "We're over, Avery," he said flatly. "You're just refusing to accept it. Vanessa and I are moving on with our life together. I needed to make it official. Everyone here deserves to know the truth." Vanessa slid her arm around Blake's waist, her new engagement ring glittering under the chandelier. Avra could only stare, feeling as if the world had come off its axis. "You coward," she whispered, her voice cracking. "You couldn't even tell me to my face. You had to drag me here to humiliate me." Blake shrugged, a hollow arrogance in his eyes. "I don't owe you anything anymore," he spat. "Sign the divorce papers when they're served. Stop clinging to something that has been dead for a long time." In that moment, Avery realized the magnitude of his cruelty. He didn't just want to be rid of her. He wanted to break her spirit in that process. However, she found a spark of strength in the depths of her despair. Lifting her chin, she took a deep breath. "I will never forget this," she murmured, her voice a solemn promise. "You have shown your true colors to the entire world tonight. I hope you both get what you deserve." With that, Avery turned and walked out of the estate, tears streaming down her face. The crowd parted in silence. Some guests reached out to touch her shoulder in a useless show of comfort. The doors slammed shut behind her, and her world felt irrevocably changed. As she got into a waiting taxi, her phone buzzed with calls and texts that she ignored. Avery knew she was at the lowest point of her life. She placed a protective hand on her belly. She may have lost a husband, but she still had a child to protect, and perhaps in the future, a score to settle. In the days following that disastrous night, Avery's grief was overwhelming. She holed up in the master bedroom, the very space where she and Blake had whispered dreams about the future. It now felt haunted by a wraith of broken promises. She would curl up in bed, the comforter pulled up to her chin, replaying Blake's proposal to Vanessa in her mind. Like a nauseating loop, Shackleton escape. Her phone continued to buzz with calls from concerned friends, acquaintances, and even busybodies from Blake's social circle. With each notification, Avery felt herself being dragged back into that humiliating moment at the mansion. She ignored most of the calls, though she eventually mustered the courage to speak to her younger sister, Sandra. Soft-spoken yet fiercely protective, Sandra offered her unwavering support. "We'll get through this, Avery," she promised. "You're strong. You have the baby to think about. Don't let that scoundrel's actions define your future." Despite the encouraging words, Avery found the simplest tasks daunting. She struggled to eat, her appetite smothered by the heartbreak that had lodged in her throat. Sleep offered little respite as nightmares of Blake and Vanessa's public display would wake her up each night. Worst of all, her emotions were magnified by pregnancy hormones, creating a storm of sadness, anger, betrayal, and fear for the future. In the midst of the whirlwind of despair came the official documentation. Divorce papers delivered in a pristine envelope with Blake's lawyer's letterhead. The finality of it all, Madavery's hands tremble as she opened the package. Blake was moving quickly. He wanted to dissolve their marriage, dividing assets with the cold precision of a business deal. Attached was an offer of a monthly stipend until her child reached adulthood, a calculated sum that rire of hush money. The subtext was clear: take the deal and disappear from his life quietly. Avery bristled at the thought of letting him buy her silence. However, practical concerns weighed heavily on her mind. She needed financial stability, especially now that she was pregnant. Her job, a humble administrator position at a local non-profit, provided steady but modest income. The cost of raising a child alone in Dallas was daunting. For a few agonizing days, Shuvard tempted to sign just to secure her baby's future. But every time she raised a pen to sign, she thought of that humiliating moment Blake proposed to Vanessa right in front of her. Cher called the protective flutter of the baby in her womb, as if her unborn child were urging her to stay strong. Avery pushed the papers aside, deciding she would consult with an attorney first. During this turbulent period, she received a surprising invitation from none other than Genevieve, Blake's mother. Though Avery initially hesitated, surely Genevieve would side with her son. She agreed to meet. Sensing a hint of compassion in the older woman's voice, they arranged to meet at a quiet cafe in downtown Dallas. Upon arrival, Genevieve appeared strained and older than Avery remembered. Her expensive jewelry did not disguise the distress etched on her face. "Avery," Genevieve said softly, reaching across the table to squeeze her hand. "I am so very sorry for what Blake has done. I never raised him to behave that way." Tears welled in her eyes, and Avery felt her own well up in response. "I want you to know you will always be family to me, and I am here if you need anything." Despite her pain, Avery felt touched by the gesture. She didn't know how genuine it was. Perhaps Genevieve was attempting damage control. Still, she felt a flicker of relief that at least someone acknowledged the cruelty she had endured. "Thank you," Avery whispered. "I appreciate your kindness. While I'm not sure where we stand now, I don't want to cause any trouble." Genevieve nodded solemnly. "I understand, but please keep me in the loop about the baby. I want to be a part of my grandchild's life, no matter what. And if you need a good lawyer, I can recommend one who is not tied to the family, someone who will protect your interests." The meeting ended with a hug and Genevieve handed Avery a business card with the name of a reputable divorce attorney. Avery left with mixed feelings. On one hand, she felt some comfort in Genevieve's support. On the other, she couldn't shake the question: why hadn't Genevieve intervened sooner? Returning to her empty home, Avery looked at herself in the mirror for a long time. Her reflection showed her stained cheeks, dark circles under her eyes, and the gentle curve of her pregnant belly. In that moment, she made a decision. She would not allow the humiliation to define her or the life of her unborn child. Though the road ahead seemed arduous, she clung to a determination to emerge from this ordeal stronger. She picked up her phone, scrolling through the voice messages full of gossip until she found the number on the business card. With a steadying breath, she dialed the attorney's number, mentally preparing herself for a new battle. For her and her child. She would fight. Perhaps in time, she would even find a way to turn this devastation into a source of resilience. What would you do in Avery's place? Would you accept Blake's settlement offer, or would you hire an attorney and fight for more? Share your opinion in the comments. The new dawn, Avery's first meeting with attorney Rebecca Norris, marked a pivotal moment in her fight for independence. Rebecca was a sharp-tongued woman with salt and pepper hair, dressed in a nonsense black blazer. Her eyes conveyed both intelligence and empathy, and Avery felt a sense of relief as she discussed the complexities of the divorce case. What Blake did is not only emotionally devastating, it's legally reprehensible, Rebecca stated calmly as she skimmed the documents Avery had brought, publicly proposing to another person while still married. Even if Texas's fault-based divorce laws aren't as punitive as some states, still presents a compelling picture of his misconduct, and that can work in our favor. A small spark of hope ignited in Avery. She had feared an uphill legal battle, envisioning Blake's expensive lawyer steamrolling her, but Rebecca's confidence gave her courage. Over the course of an hour, they mapped out a strategy that included fighting for a fair alimony, custody arrangements, and possibly even compensation for a mistress. Rebecca made it clear that Avery's reluctance to sign Blake's hush money settlement was a wise decision, as accepting it without negotiation could have left her in a less favorable position. Beyond the legal realm, Avery began to focus on her emotional and financial stability. She realized that the non-profit job, while rewarding, might not be enough to sustain her and her child in the long run. Swallowing her pride, she updated her resume and began applying for positions at large organizations, hoping to find a role that offered better benefits and a more substantial salary. The process was not quick or easy. She sent out dozens of applications, went on interviews that sometimes went nowhere, and dealt with bouts of morning sickness in between. During this phase, she sought refuge in the support of her sister, Sandra. Sandra would often come over to cook healthy meals, ensuring Avery got proper nutrition for the pregnancy. She also accompanied Avery to doctor's appointments at Mount Sinai Hospital, where Avery felt her resolve strengthen each time she heard her baby's heartbeat on the ultrasound. She discovered small moments of joy, such as finding out she was expecting a girl. That milestone brought her to tears, reminding her that in the midst of the darkness was a precious ray of light. As her belly grew, so did her determination. She confided in a close friend, Rachel, who worked at a tech startup in Dallas. Through this connection, Avery landed an interview for an administrative manager position. The job was a significant step up from her previous role, offering a flexible schedule and robust maternity benefits. The interviewer was candid about their challenges of the position, tight deadlines, multitasking among different departments, but Avery embraced the possibility of forging a new path. She left the interview feeling cautiously optimistic. Within a week, the compagnie extended her a formal job offer. Avery accepted, her heart thumping with excitement and relief. Though anxiety still loomed, moving to a new job while pregnant was a brave leap. She felt that moving forward was her only option. On her first day, she discovered a supportive workplace culture. Her boss, a mother of two herself, expressed understanding for her situation and event-provided resources to balance the pregnancy with a demanding workload. Meanwhile, the divorce proceedings began in earnest. Rebecca filed documents citing Blake's extramarital affair as grounds. Blake's lawyers responded with expected bluster and denial, attempting to blame Avery for failing to maintain the marital relationship. The Argedsha was emotionally distant and unyielding, trying to paint Blake as a victim of a loveless marriage. In legal skirmishes, Avery felt her anger rise, but each time she reviewed a deceptive deposition from Blake's side, she channeled that fury into motivation to fight harder, to not give in. Each day felt like a balancing act, juggling the new job, attending prenatal checkups, and preparing for their relentless divorce battle. But despite the challenges, Avery felt an ember of strength glowing in her heart. With each passing week, she noticed a subtle shift in her mindset. She wasn't just surviving, she was laying the groundwork for a comeback. In the background, news of Blake's public betrayal and his abrupt engagement to Vanessa traveled quickly through Dallas social circles. Some of Blake's old friends quietly reached out to Avery, expressing sympathy. Others distanced themselves from the drama, wanting to remain neutral. Avery learned to filter her social media accounts, blocking out negativity and focusing on constructive support. Through it all, she resisted the temptation to lash out publicly, trusting that her best response would be to live well and secure a stable future for her child. One evening, after a particularly exhausting day at work, Avery sank into her couch, phone in hand, reviewing work emails and messages from acquaintances. Then she came across an advertisement for a prenatal yoga class. Impulsively, she signed up, thinking it might help her cope with the stress. The first session felt awkward. She was surrounded by radiant pregnant women who all looked relaxed and at peace. However, as she moved through gentle poses, focusing on her breath and their life growing within her, a calm she hadn't felt in months washed over her. Avery walked out of that yoga studio, feeling not only physically looser, but mentally unburdened. She had discovered a healthy outlet for her anxiety, a sanctuary where she could reconnect with her body and her emotions. That night, she journaled about her aspirations for herself and her unborn daughter. She wrote about building a life filled with dignity, love, and resilience, one free from the shadows Blake had cast. Step by step, Avery was forging a path forward. Though the pain of the betrayal still irked, and the humiliating memories still haunted her dreams, she refused to be defined by the heart. She chose to be defined by her determination, her growing skill set, her expanding circle of supportive friends, and the immense love she already felt for the child she was. Little did she know that fate had more twists in store for her. Twists that would finally lead her to an unexpected triumph, where karma would turn the wheel of justice in her favor. What do you think of Avery's journey so far? What do you think will happen next for her and Blake? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. The final reckoning. Blake and Vanessa wasted no time flaunting their romance. Weekly photos of luxurious dinners, weekend getaways, and her glittering engagement ring appeared on social media. Publicly, they acted like a power couple destined for success. Privately, however, a very different story was unfolding. Marcus, Blake's father, could not ignore the scandal that erupted when Blake proposed to Vanessa in front of Avery. Furious, he kept most of the criticism behind closed doors, hoping to protect the family's reputation. Vanessa aimed to capitalize on her new status, pushing bold marketing moves at the family's car dealerships. She proposed flashy ad campaigns, and even hinted at opening a luxury showroom. Marcus, ever the pragmatist, listened politely, but remained skeptical of her extravagant ideas. Vanessa's eagerness, for instance, prestige clashed with the realities of the business. She wanted massive budgets, but Marcus was wary of hemorrhaging funds. Despite this, Blake tried to appease her. He granted as many of her requests as he could, hoping to prove that leaving Avery was not a mistake. At first, Vanessa seemed pleased. She boasted of rebranding the company, confident that her touch would transform it into an industry leader. However, the more she demanded, the more tension grew between Blake and his father. Marcus saw rising costs with little tangible return. In board meetings, he questioned Vanessa's plans, warning Blake that reckless spending could hurt both their bottom line and investor trust. Feeling an internal conflict, Blake had offended Vanessa in public while pleading with her in private to scale back her expenditures. At home, their facade began to crack. Vanessa would criticize Blake whenever his work kept them away from her. She accused him of valuing business over her happiness, demanding more lavish gifts and constant reassurance. Heated arguments replaced the honeymoon phase. Blake, unaccustomed to such relentless conflict, grew increasing lusters. Without Avery's calming influence, he struggled to maintain any semblance of peace. Meanwhile, rumors circulated through Dallas high society circles suggesting Vanessa might be using Blake as a stepping stone for her own ambitions. Some speculated that her vision for the dealership's future was a cover for greed. Others whispered that Blake had blindly rushed into the relationship out of pride. Still, neither Blake nor Vanessa would admit fault. Determined to validate their image, they plunged headlong into planning an extravagant wedding. Costs spiraled as Vanessa insisted on designer outfits, elaborate floral arrangements, and celebrity entertainment. Behind their glamorous Instagram posts, the fighting escalated. Marcus demanded financial transparency while investors worried about frivolous spending. Under pressure from all sides, Blake felt increasingly trapped. The lifestyle he thought he wanted had transformed into a constant struggle for damage control. Unbeknownst to them, these cracks in their perfect image were only the beginning. By seeking validation and ignoring the underlying struggle, they set the stage for an even more public downfall than their engagement spectacle. By the time Avery was nearing her due date, a storm of trouble had begun to converge on Blake and Vanessa. Crafted Kingdom. It began with an internal audit of the family dealerships initiated by Marcus, who suspected irregularities in the new marketing budgets. Sure enough, auditors uncovered excessive spending far beyond typical company allocations. Inflated invoices, unexplained expenditures, and questionable vendor contracts all pointed directly to Vanessa's newly established marketing department. In some cases, funds had been siphoned off for personal expenses, luxury trips, high-end fashion, shows, and lavish dinners that had little to do with actual business campaigns. When confronted, Vanessa played innocent. She blamed a lack of communication and administrative errors for the discrepancies. But mounting evidence suggested a misuse of company funds. Marcus was furious. "My son may be blind, but I am not," he growled in a tense meeting with Blake and Vanessa. "This is my family's legacy, and I will not let it be destroyed by selfish whims." Blake, torn between defending his fiancée and saving face with his father, tried to argue that it was all a misunderstanding, but Marcus was not swayed. Legal counsel warned that Vanessa's conduct put the company in a precarious position. The business ran the risk of losing credibility among investors if word got out that the future head of the dealership chain was involved in such financial fiascos. Then the robbery scandal. One night, a brand new luxury car disappeared from one of the dealership showrooms. Security footage revealed a shadowy figure tampering with locks. Initially, Blake assumed it was a random robbery until the footage showed the thief handing over the stolen vehicle to an unidentified accomplice, drove it directly to a private lot where Vanessa's name was on a lease. Their news shocked everyone. Though details were murky, speculation ran wild about whether Vanessa had orchestrated the theft for personal gain or as part of some complicated scheme. Police launched an investigation, and though Vanessa was not officially charged, the fiasco added another layer of reputational damage. Investors grew nervous. Meanwhile, the lavish wedding plans dissolved into chaos. Vendors began to demand deposits and final payments. The event planner threatened to cancel if she didn't receive overdue fees. In a frantic scramble, Blake drained personal accounts and even tried to dip into business reserves. When Marcus he blocked the company's funds. Furious arguments ensued between father and son, culminating with Marcus threatening to remove Blake from the business entirely if he couldn't get his fiancée under control. For Vanessa, the cracks in Blake's facade of endless wealth finale became visible. She lashed out at him, accusing him of misrepresenting his financial stability. "You made me believe I would have it all," she screamed during one heated argument overheard by staff at the dealership's main office. "How dare you embarrass me like this? I'm supposed, Tobe, your future wife, not a bargain basement bride." Blake, who had never been skilled at handling conflict without Avery's calming influence, also lost his temper. He hurled his unaccusation, blaming Vanessa for greed and making impractical business decisions that threatened the entire family empire. Their fights became routine. The once luxurious condominium became filled with yelling and slammed doors. In a matter of months, their dream life had turned into a power struggle nightmare. Then, in a final twist of poetic justice, Vanessa herself was caught in a compromising situation. An incriminating set of text messages with a man rumored to be a venture capitalist. She had been courting him for new marketing contracts. Blake discovered them accidentally when he picked up her finito, read a text message from a vendor. What he found instead were flirtatious sexings, references to secret meetings, and hints that she was willing to leave Blake if the right opportunities came along. Blake's world came crashing down, rage and betrayal washing over him. He confronted Vanessa, waving the phone in her face. "All this time, I trusted you," he roared. "I defied my entire family. I left my own wife, and for what? So you could be plotting your next conquest." Vanessa scoffed, rolling her eyes. "Don't be naive, Blake. I wouldn't have to look elsewhere if you had delivered on your promises. I'm not going to be tied to a sinking ship." A violent argument ensued, culminating with Vanessa storming out of the condominium with her belongings. The wedding was off. Furious, Blake demanded she return and every penny she had siphoned from the dealership's budgets. But Vanessa laughed in his face, threatening to take him down with her if he made the embezzlement accusation public. She hinted that she had compromising information on Blake's business dealings, implying he wasn't entirely clean either. The confrontation left him reeling, unsure how to proceed without further scandal. Broken, humbled, and hundreds of thousands of dollars poorer, Blake found himself alone in the empty condominium. Winnow felt more like a tomb of shattered illusions. His father's threats, Todus inherit him, loomed. The business empire, which he once thought he would undoubtedly inherit, was in a precarious situation. All because he had allowed his arrogance and lust to dictate his life choices. In the vacuum of that condominium, Heffinelli understood the depth of his betrayal of Avery. He remembered the night he proposed to Vanessa in front of her, the look of devastation on Avery's face, and the unborn child he had so cried dismissed. Blake realized with a nauseating clarity that he had lost everything: his reputation, his father's trust, and Theon woman who had genuinely cared for him. The house of cards he built with Vanessa had tumbled down, and he was left standing in the rubble, waiting for karma's final conclusive bell to toll. What do you think of Blake and Vanessa's downfall? Did they get what they deserved? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. The last word, as fate would have it, Karma's final blow can meet the same time Avery was welcoming a new life. She gave birth to a healthy baby girl named Aurora, a name she chose for its meaning. Dawn, symbolizing new beginnings and hope after a long, dark night. The labor was intense, lasting almost 18 hours, but Avery endured to bar each contraction with fierce determination. By her side, Sandra offered unwavering support, holding her hand and wiping her. When Aurora finally let out her first cry, Avery broke down in tears of gratitude and overwhelming love. In the days following Aurora's birth, Avery felt a sense of peace and wholeness she hadn't known in a long time. She took her daughter home, to a modest but comfortable apartment she had recently rented closer to her new workplace. This space was not luxurious by any means, but it was hers, and it felt safe. A few colleagues from her job at the tech startup visited with gifts, diapers, baby clothes, and even a crowdfunder basket of essentials. For the first time since her marriage fell apart, Avery saw future filled with possibilities. Meanwhile, the divorce proceedings came to their final stage. Thanks to Rebecca's meticulous legal strategy, combined with Blake's very public affair and the disastrous consequences, Avery had the upper hand. Blake's lawyers tried a final round of intimidation tactics, questioning Avery's fitness as a mother, hinting she was financial unstable. But Rebecca dismantled every argument with evidence of Avery's steady employment and healthy living environment. Furthermore, the courts took into account the emotional distress and humiliating circumstances that led to the separation. By the time the final ruling was issued, Avery was granted full primary custody. Blake was required to provide substantial child support. News came to Avery through mutual acquaintances that Blake's finances were in dire straits. Marcus had frozen his access to certain family funds, forcing Blake to rely on a modest salary and whatever personal savings he had left. He had moved out of the opulent condominium and was living in a smaller apartment near the dealership. Vanessa was long gone, and Ramo suggested she had left Dallas altogether, possibly to avoid any legal repercussions from the embezzlement allegations. Some whispered that the venture capitalist she had been flirting with had also cut ties, leaving her with no soft place to land. One afternoon, a few weeks after the divorce was finalized, Avery was cradling Aurora when she heard a timid knock on her door. Looking through the peephole, she was shocked to see Blake there. Disheveled, his shoulders slumped, though her pulse quickened with a mix of anger and weariness. She opened the door a few inches, keeping the chain latch in place. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice calm but firm. Blake exhaled, looking fragile as if the weight of thrall hung on his shoulders. "I came to see my daughter," he said quietly. "And to talk to you." Avery hesitated. Legally, he had visitation rights, though they were structured through a formal schedule. She considered slamming the door in his face, but a part of her remembered that Aurora one day might want to know her. And so, after a moment of deliberation, Avery unhooked the door and allowed him to enter. The man who walked into her living room bore little resemblance to the arrogant husband who had humiliated her. His once confident air was replaced with a hollow sadness. He looked around the tidy space, the baby toys and the warm sunlight streaming through the curtains. When his gaze fell on Aurora, asleep in Avery's arms, tears welled in his eyes. "She's beautiful," he whispered, sitting down when Avery motioned for him to. He waited, as if unsure whether Avery would allow him to hold the baby. After a few tense seconds, Avery carefully handed Aurora to him. With her maternal instincts on high alert, Blake cradled his daughter with a gentleness that surprised Avery. Tears slid down his cheeks as he gazed at her tiny features. "I'm sorry," he finally managed to say, looking at Avery. "For everything, for how I treated you, for humiliating you, for not being there during the pregnancy." Avery stood at a slight distance, her arms crossed. A part of her had dreamed of this moment, of Blake coming to his senses and apologizing, but hearing the words felt surreal. "I can't change what happened," she said gently, but without wavering. "And neither can you. Aurora is my priority now." Blake nodded, his expression a mix of regret and acceptance. He asked if there was any chance they could work things out, perhaps start over. Avery felt a surge of heartbreak and anger. "We are far past that point," she replied, her voice firm. "The divorce is finalized. You now have responsibilities as a father, and I expect you to honor them. But as for us, there is no going back." He didn't argue. Perhaps he was too broken to fight. He simply held Aurora for a moment longer, then he gently handed her back. Before left, Blake asked if he could come back to visit, following the proper schedule. Avery nodded, saying a brief but polite goodbye. After he was gone, she stood by the window, holding Aurora close. She looked down to see Blake walk away, his shoulders slumped, the vibrant swagger gone. The contrast between their two paths could not have been starker. Avery felt sadness for her daughter's father, but also a triumph that she had rebuilt her life without him, and would continue to do so. In a sense, she had already won the battle. He had so brazenly provoked. She had found a new strength, a new love in her daughter, and a new confidence in herself. And that was how Avery got the last word, not by stooping to Blake's level of cruelty, but by living a life that radiated genuine hope and possibility. Revenge, if it could even be called that, resided in her peace of mind, and the future she was forging. She was thriving, raising Aurora in a home filled with warmth and authenticity, while Blake faced the rubble of the empire he had almost inherited, isolated from the illusions that once fueled his arrogance. Indeed, karma had played its hand, and Avery had emerged with the greatest gift of all, a beautiful daughter and a life that was truly Huron. What do you think of Ava's journey? What lesson do you think she learned? Tell me your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories.